My research has a couple of arms, I guess. Broadly, I look at British politics in particular. A lot of the time, I look at British elections, but I also have another interest in political trust, and that's not just here in the UK. So at the moment, I'm working on a paper about trust and how that's issue dependent. So although you may have a certain kind of latent, as we would call it, like a regular level of trust in government, actually, when we start to ask about particular issues, that trust can either go up or go down, and that depends on how important that issue is to you. I'm also working on some papers about identities and how they might be constructed, political identities here in the UK, and also we're going to look and do that comparing with other countries. And really see how they matter for trust. You know, do you only trust people who sort of look like you and say the things that you say, or do you also trust people who maybe think the opposite to what you think and maybe don't look like you do?
And you've also been looking at Boris Johnson in particular, haven't you? What have you found, and how did you find this out?
So the thing about Boris Johnson is that the British public have had a lot of experience with him even before he became Prime Minister. So he was the Mayor of London, obviously. Most of us remember him in the 2012 Olympics opening ceremony. We had an idea of what he was like already, which is why some of the issues, perhaps you would frame it that way, that have come about during his premiership have not been that surprising because we knew what he was like already. So, for example, I think some people were calling it cronyism, where large government contracts were given to people who the Conservatives knew. That didn't really permeate or that didn't really impact trust because it was what was expected by some people of the Conservative government anyway. Whereas what we're seeing now with Partygate, or however you would like to call it, this is unexpected. So we all trusted the government were making these rules to protect everybody, and we trusted that we were abiding by them, and so were they. But now that it's come to light that they weren't, and it looks as if it's sort of one rule for us and another for them, that's why we've seen this really impact the government, and particularly trusting the government.
There's one thing that really stood out to me about your research, which is that looking ahead to the next election, you feel, we will be talking about this. What kind of impact, what kind of response are you expecting from this?
We've already seen the Conservatives take a hit in the polls, and we're seeing that Labour and the Liberal Democrats and the Greens are getting a boost from that. But a lot of those Conservative Party sort of defectors have actually gone to say don't know. So they've become undecided. So they might not have actually committed to voting for a different party at the next election. Although there were many people who voted Conservative who don't normally at the 2019 general election. So the local elections are definitely something to watch out for. And that this particular issue, it's about how much it sticks, really. The British public may well get bored of it. They may well get used to the idea that these rules were broken. But they also might really think that this has been kind of a huge breach in trust, and they just can't vote for a party that behaves like this. So all of that is sort of still to play out.
What can Boris actually do to rebuild this trust, which you suspect has been lost?
In the Commons debate about the Sue Gray update or report that has been released, what Boris Johnson did was he focused on issues that he knows that he's trusted on. For example, Brexit. He mentioned crime and the COVID-19 response. He also quite cleverly deflected the blame, perhaps you might put it that way, a little bit by saying, OK, the lessons we're going to learn from this is we're going to set up a new office for the Prime Minister. So really stressing those things instead of, although he did at the very beginning apologise and say that he got it, he didn't stress his apology. He kept repeating these issues that he's really trusted on. So that's one way to rebuild. But, likewise, Labour in the opposition and the other opposing parties could keep stressing the issues that they are trusted on. So, for example, in the latest poll, for the first time since the 2010 election, Labour are now trusted more on the economy than the Conservatives are. And that is what we call a valence issue. So this is like a really important issue, and everybody wants a good economy. So if Labour and other parties can keep sort of clawing back that trust on those particular issues that everybody cares about, then Boris Johnson's really going to be in trouble no matter what he does.
That's the main two parties. What about the Lib Dems, the Greens? What could they do you suspect, to build on this?
The Liberal Democrats have always been really good local campaigners, so I'm sure that they'll be sort of employing those regular tactics that they use and really getting out on the doorsteps and showing people that they are different and how they are different to the Conservative Party. The Greens, they also have sort of key values of this sort of like integrity and holding these issues really sort of at their core. And if they keep being able to sort of mobilize people on that, then they will also see continued success. And the Scottish National Party, of course, and Plaid Cymru in Wales, they are set to make gains in both of their devolved regions, which that means that the Conservatives will lose some seats if that happens. So really, anybody else's gain is the Conservatives' loss.
Based on your research, and I appreciate you don't have a crystal ball, do you think Boris Johnson will be able to remain as Prime Minister? Do you feel that the trust that you believe he may have lost, it will basically end his premiership, and the Tory party potentially is already looking at a successor?
So the thirst for Boris Johnson to resign, that really depends upon the internal mechanics of the Conservative Party. There was in the Commons debate on the Sue Gray report a lot of critical points raised by Conservative members of Parliament. So it may well be that they continue to call for him to resign. But by and large, we do have another 2 years left until the next scheduled election. Of course, whether there's an early one is an open question. And if this is kind of all forgotten about by the time that next election comes around, then he may well ride it out. It's really about how it unfolds in the next few days and weeks that's going to be the super interesting thing, both for people like me and for the British public.